Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and each week I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to share some of yours. I am so excited about this week's guest, my friend Kasey White. Kasey, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody kind of who you are.
Well, I'm so glad that you asked me to come. This is awesome. So my name is Kasey White, and I have been teaching now for 16 years. I have taught at the same school for 16 years. I've taught every grade from first to fifth. I've done administration, instructional facilitator, and so I found a home at my Jones Elementary in Waller, and I love it there, and I love my kids there.
I
So
love
that's
that
what I've been
so
doing.
much. Well, and it's so funny. For those people listening, Kasey and I actually work in the same district where when I first started teaching. So I've always greatly respected her and the work she's done. So I'm thrilled to have this conversation. But anytime I have any guest on, Kasey, the first question I always like to start with is going back to the beginning. And that is, when you were a kid, thinking of all the things you wanted to be when you grew up, does it align at all with what you're doing now?
Not at all. Not at all. When I was a kid, I was the one giving teachers problems, probably making teachers reconsider their job choice. So I would have never ever imagined that I would be a teacher. I was a little difficult to deal with in school,
Yeah.
and so I didn't. I'd never once thought about being a teacher when I was little.
What did you
Uh,
think you were going to do?
I always had lots of different ideas.
Yeah.
I like to write a lot. Like in school, that's one thing I did like to do was write and read. So I always thought maybe something with writing and reading. And I was really into social studies, but I don't think I really had a plan. I think even when I went to college, I kind of just went to college because that's what you're supposed to do.
Huh.
And I started off in social work, and then I changed my major probably 3 times. And then I did computers because I was told that was like the big industry to go into out of college. That's where I'd make money. And so I really didn't have a plan. And so I really fell into teaching by accident. By accident. I'm glad I did, but definitely was not on the radar
Well, it's
when I was
clearly where
younger.
you were meant to be, considering you're
Yes.
still there. So,
Yes.
when you decided that teaching was going to be kind of your next choice, were you immediately drawn to elementary, or did you just kind of fall into that too?
Well, what happened was my sister at the time came to stay with me. She was like in first grade, and so I was a grad student at Prairie View A&M, and so I lived in Prairie View, and so I took her to Jones. I enrolled her at Jones, and I really fell in love with the staff there. They were really really great with her, and it was so funny because when I was in grad school, I said, "Well, I'm going to go ahead and get my teacher certification alternatively." And I thought about Jones because that was the only real experience I had with like elementary. My daughter wasn't in school yet. She was too young. And so when I went, the principal at the time was Carol Bates. And I was like, I have zero experience. I don't even know what to tell you. She's like, have you done any? I'm like, I think when I was little, I coached a girls soccer team one season. She's like, you know what? That's experience. So she was really great, but she knew me from my sister. And I just was like, I really like your campus. I'd love to be a part of it. I know absolutely nothing. I am a fresh slate, and if you could just give me the opportunity, and she did. I mean, she did, and to this day, I'm always like, "What made you?" But she's like, "I saw something in you." So yeah, I really went there with zero experience. I just finished my alternative certification like the week before, and I was like, "Yeah, let me try this out." But I will be very honest. I did not think it would be. I didn't think it'd be a lasting career. I was still getting my master's in business. So I almost thought maybe I'll do this for a little while and then I'll, move into the business industry.
Well, you taught for several years, and then obviously at some point you realized that I kind of some of these leadership roles at school I think might be up my alley. And so what was that kind of like for you, deciding that to take that leap to step outside of the classroom and into some different roles on campus?
Well, it was funny because I hadn't taught that long in the classroom, maybe like 5 years in the classroom. And I was interested, a position for instructional facilitator came up at our campus. And I was like, well, that's still really much hands-on with children. You're influencing how the teachers, can help them. You're helping teachers help kids. And then it was funny because our school was so small, they paired that with also the assistant principal position. So it was a 2-for-1 deal. At the time, I think we maybe had 250 kids. A very small campus. I'm like, okay, sure. So I wanted the instruction facilitator role. And so with it came the AP role. And so when I got it, once again, Ms. Bates was like, I know your heart is with kids and teachers. And so that's where most of your time will be spent. And as AP, it was just funny because that's a lot of dealing with parents. And I was like, I really like to deal with the kids. This is much better. So I'm not a big rulesy person. So I was having to look through the, like campus guidelines when I talk to parents and things like that. So, but it was a really good experience because as an administrator looking on to teacher roles, I felt like because I was such a young in teaching that maybe I was good at looking at what teachers needed and what they really were going through as an administrator, knowing that I understand the real day-to-day struggles. And even when things being implemented, I'm like, well, how's this going to really work? When you hit the ground running in a real classroom with 20 kids on different levels. And so it was really a good experience. It really also made me realize I don't want to be an administrator, that I wanted to still work closely with children. It takes very special people to meet administrators. I think it's very special people. I've had awesome administrators. And so I've been very blessed, but I just don't think for me, that's my wheelhouse. I think really being with kids, I found myself, I was supposed to be at like meetings probably, and I was like tutoring kids. They're like, where are you? I'm like, I'm with a kid, we're reading a book, so it really, luckily Miss Bates was really understanding all the time. Like she was like, I still want small groups. I still want to work with kids. And so she took a lot of the AP off of me because she knew where my heart was. But it was a good experience. It's good to know kind of what you do and do not want to do within education. And so I think really definitely kids are more my wheelhouse.
Well, I think it's a reminder that it is such a great reminder that it is important to know what you do and don't like. And it's okay to take a jump and try something new and realize this isn't quite what I love doing as much and go back. And like, there's no issue with that at all, because in the end, you have to love what you do. And one thing that I've always been impressed with about you, Kasey, is that you pour every ounce of yourself into the kids and into what you do, but you also pour yourself completely into being a mom. And so I'd love to know, like, how do you balance the two where you feel like you're giving yourself to enough to everybody around you?
Well, I think that teacher parent guilt is a very real thing. I think every teacher I teach with who's also a parent, it is the unending guilt of when you're with your students of, am I doing enough for my kids? And when with your kids, are you doing enough with your students? So it's been so long since we seen each other. I was a mom of one, and now I have two, and I have two bonus children as well now. So I'm a mom of four. And so we have 18, 11, 9, and about to turn 8.
Busy.
Yes, very busy. My first couple of years with my oldest, she spent a lot of time at the school. I think like 7 p.m. she would be under desk doing homework, and I would still be, working. My son, my youngest, has autism, so he requires a lot of support and a lot of help. So I've tried to, as of late, try to really do a balance of making sure I have stuff left over to give to my kids, to really pour into them. The good thing is that my school is such a family that my son goes to school there, and I have people that really take good care of him, look out for him. So I feel like I can kind of have the best of both worlds. At school, he's well taken care of. And then at home, I have really made a conscious effort to try to come home and just be a mom. Normally when they go to sleep, I turn the laptop back on and finish paperwork, but to try to be a mom. Yeah.
And I think you said something there that's so important for people who hear, is that parent teacher combination there is a lot of guilt that comes with that, because you view your own students and your colleagues as your family too. And so it's like you give yourself all day long at this job that sometimes you don't feel like you give as much at home because you're just so wiped out. It was so funny because, before my mom became a teacher, she cleaned houses for a living, and the houses that she cleaned, the people loved her. Like she kept them, but our house was not as clean. And she was like, that's what I do all day long. I don't feel like coming home and cleaning my house. Now, don't let any of my clients know that our house looks like this. But, and I when she became a teacher, she was like, Todd, it's the same way. She goes, I'm just so tired that I'm going to need your help with doing your schoolwork. I'm going to need your help with this stuff, because our jobs are demanding. And so, I one thing I will say, as an elementary educator, when your kids are young, it is the added benefit of getting to have
Yes.
them at your school that does definitely help a little bit with some of that stuff. But Kasey, one thing that I talk about in many of these episodes is, regardless of what you do or how much success you find or anything like that, I think we all still deal with doubt that we're as good as we want to be at our job, or we compare ourselves to others that we may see online or that we may teach from down the hall. So how do you keep doubt at bay so that it doesn't take root in your own life?
I think that it's a big part of being a teacher. I think you're always doubting, because I always view my success by my kids. So when they're struggling or they are not performing where they're supposed to be or we want them to be, but I moved into special education. And so the one way I keep doubt at bay is I always look for progress. And I always tell myself, what does it look like for this kid? And I've seen kids grow. And I'm gonna tell you, progress to me is even that you like school better than you did a month ago, that you're happier than you were a month ago, that you've made a new friend, So I think when we cut ourselves a little bit of slack to know that. So it's not always just about academics. We teachers do a lot. So if we've taken a shy kid and now they're sharing with the class, and, we've taken a kid who was like, I don't like school, I don't like, and all of a sudden they're like sad when school's canceled, or they're like, I don't want to be online, I want to come back in the building. I think that's how we keep doubt at bay. I also am very blessed. My special education team, especially this year, is super supportive. We are so much a team and a family. And so constantly, our administrators this year started like brags, and sometimes you'll go to your door and there's randomly a brag for you that's like, I just shot. Yeah, and you're just like, oh my, I mean, literally you'll get like teary because you're like, oh, maybe I am doing a good job. People, so those have been really awesome. And I have a great team. And like my team leader will randomly just text me like, I love you. You're awesome. Thanks for all you do. And so I think you really have to surround yourself with good people when you teach. It's a very tough job. It's a very tough job. You need people to be there to remind you that, on those hard days that we're doing we're doing the right thing, and I think the best way to keep doubt at bay is if you're always making decisions that is best for kids.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't maybe go along with what other people like or want, if you're always just saying, is this what's best for our kids? Then you can always go to sleep at night knowing, you know what, we did the right thing today. And I think that's super important, super important.
Well, when I think of these Tell Your Story episodes too, I think about looking at us as a whole person. And so when you look back on your life and reflect, I know there's many celebrations, but also many struggles and different things like that that make you the person you are today. And so when you're reflecting, what is one part of your journey that you're like, you know what, this really played a part into the woman you see today?
Oh, definitely 4 years ago when my son was diagnosed with autism. My firstborn, like she went to school. I was a first-year teacher and I was doing all this work, and she's like, I can read. I'm like, oh, look at you. I don't feel like I didn't even help her as much as I probably should have as a parent. This one I'm like reading to every night. And so his diagnosis made a huge difference. I think it has by far made me a better educator, a better human being, a better person. And so now, especially with my career, I moved over, like I said, to special education because there is nothing like being a parent and sitting in a meeting and someone tells you that your child has autism and intellectual disability. And I just look at parents and it's fear. It's the fear of unknown of where does this lead my child. And so I just think my son his autism has really, I think, transformed me as a person, as a mother. And I try to be an advocate for him. Advocate for my students, and also it's just I think made me a better person because it's made me more faithful. I have to really rely on faith that he's going to overcome and he's going to be at the best that God has called him to be. Right. But also I think it's probably given me more patience and probably made me also appreciate what's truly important. I think live and teach from a different lens, especially in my teaching. I am I cared nothing less about test scores. I couldn't care less. I couldn't. I want children. I look at children all the time and I think, where will you be as an adult? Are we helping you be the best person you can be? Because that's how I look at my son every day. Are we doing what's going to help you be the best you can be? I don't know what that looks like for him. I don't know to what degree, that he'll be independent when he gets older or, but are we doing everything to help you be the best person physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? And so I try to carry that over into work that, there's people, I tell them all the time, there's people in Austin who care about this STAR test, but I care about where you'll be in 10 years. Will you be happy? Will you be able to do something that you enjoy? Will you be able to take care of your family, in 20, 30 years? And so I think he's really just given me a new perspective on life. And he has brought so much happiness and joy to my life. And he is absolutely the best. I don't even think I knew what autism really was before. And then I look back now, I'm like, I think I taught some kids way back in the day that I didn't even know they had autism, It's really given me a new perspective. And it's also really, I think, helped me with my relationship with my parents, because now I get it. I get, where you're coming from. That is scary. You have a child with a disability. You're not sure what that looks like for them. And, sometimes you're guarded because you are their advocate. And I always tell my parents, fight hard for them. I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be pushy. I'm like, no, you fight hard for your kids. And so every art I sit and I cry with the parents because I'm like, I know I was there,
Well, speaking of that though, Kasey, one thing that as I've talked to many parents with kids with different learning styles, one thing that I hear quite often, and this as an administrator and a special ed teacher, is some parents really fight that title, that getting the supports necessary. And so in your own journey as a parent of a child with needs that are different than others, did you find yourself battling with, no, I don't want him to have any kind of title associated. No, I want him to be in this lane where my other kids were? Or did you more along fall in a different kind of path yourself of understanding what your child needed?
It's so funny because I think that although logically I know because of what I do, but the parent in me, the first time we took him for a diagnosis and they said ADHD, I shamefully admit that I was relieved. Like, oh, it's not the other A. Okay, we can do ADHD. But back in my mind, I knew there was something else. But at the time, I was kind of relieved. Like, okay, we can do that A. We can do the ADHD. But when we got the autism diagnosis, of course, as a parent, I'm like, I want him in all general education classes. And so when he was a kindergartner, we put him in gen ed, and it was about 2 weeks in when we realized. And I always tell parents, like, so it is not fun for your kid to be in class where they struggle all day, or where they,
Right.
he was having tantrums and meltdowns because he was overly stimulated. It was 20
Right.
kids. It was a lot going on, and I could see the anxiety in him. And like I tell parents, when we have to do placement decisions outside of gen ed, I still believe my son one day will make it back to general education. I do. I really, really do. But for now, his small self-contained classroom is the best place for him. He's happy there. He has friends, and every day he comes home, he's on green because they have the resources necessary for the types of behaviors he has. They have the training, and he is successful. He is on a specialized curriculum. So it's not the mainstream curriculum, but for him, he's successful. And being in a classroom where you're not getting it, and you're maybe always the kid that is being told, get in line. No, you're the kid that's always kind of getting fussed at a little bit, or you're not having success. That is horrible for child self-esteem. And I love that my kid loves school. He doesn't even like that we're on Thanksgiving break right now because he wants to be in school. And for me as a parent, that's like the big win. We can worry about getting to general education later. We can worry about going mainstream later. But right now, he's getting the prerequisite skills he needs, and he's happy. And so I try to tell parents, it's hard. One, I'll say this. A lot of times, unfortunately, in our society, the label is what gets you help. Because without the autism, they didn't want to pay for speech.
Yeah.
My insurance didn't want to pay for ABA therapy. So the label really helped us get the resources we needed. And I tell parents, you use it. Like, you get the label and you get those resources for your kid. You get the speech therapy, the occupational therapy. And then one day, it's a label. And one day you can look at your kid and be like, I mean, I can't even tell you how far you came, kiddo, and so my son doesn't know that he has autism. We don't say that to him, you have autism, he doesn't know that. And it's not important for him to know that, but it is important for me. And I do use that to fight for him, to fight for the things that he needs. Also I hope that it creates understanding. I think for a lot of our family and friends, Chase is the first child that they've known personally with autism. And so we use it to help everybody kind of learn and grow, I think, about it. And my best friend still is Denise. And
Mhm.
so her son is a wonderful friend to my child and is so patient. And I think it just helps everybody, to be inclusive and to, this is what he has and this is maybe why he acts this way, but we love him. He's our family and our friend. And, I just think that, but at first, yes, the label scared, it totally scared me, but now we embrace it. And every time he does something, I think it just shows parents out there that, oh my gosh, her son has autism too. And look at him. He's riding a bike with no training wheels. He's adding and subtracting and, but it's scary, it's very scary, but yeah.
I appreciate your honesty in sharing some of that. As a school administrator, I often think the one route I always try to take with conversations with parents about newly diagnosed titles is that this isn't meant to take anything away from your child. It's meant to be able to give more, because I think something you said in there that was so important that sometime in the midst of all this newness, parents can forget is that even though we want them to be just like this other group of kids in the classroom doing everything, we
Mhm.
are actually doing more harm if they're always getting in trouble or they can't ever keep up or these other things, because that's the self-esteem
Yes.
side. And if we lose the self-esteem, we're never going to get the academic side. And so I think you said so many wonderful things in there. But Kasey, as we wrap this conversation up, one thing that I always love to end these conversations on is I believe as people, there's things that we just hold really true to our hearts and are who we are. And so if you were to leave people with one thing today, what would your one thing be for them?
I think that the one thing I always try to keep dear to my heart is that every child can be successful with even just one person, one adult that is crazy about them, one adult that will go to the end of the earth for them. I think that, and if you see a child that needs that, try to be that for them. And that's one thing, Todd, I love about you. I know that you are the kind of person that will find that kid that needs a hero and an advocate, and you will be that. But truly, every child really can be successful. They can really live to their greatest potential if even just one person says, I see the best in you and I'm going to fight for you and be there for you and encourage you every step of the way. So find a kid that needs that and be that for that kid. Life
I love
changing,
that.
even more for you than the kid.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
Kasey, I have so looked forward to this conversation. So thank you so much for being a guest on Tell Your
Thank you
Story
for having
today.
me. And Todd, I'm so proud of you. I'm following all your Facebook blogs, everything, and I'm so proud of you. And you've done such a great job to change, I think, even the face of education. Keep going, and keep advocating for these kids. You do such a great job. I'm just so proud of you and just so happy I get to say I know you. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're going to make me cry. Stop it. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your stuff, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Kasey has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every